Me. Title of this one's going to be something along the lines of rights do not come without duties. And I'm not saying rights don't exist, because they, well, philosophically you can argue that they don't. And you can steel man that pretty good. You can also straw man it pretty easily too. But either way, I believe natural rights come down from whatever authorities that's out there. But rights do not come without duty. Everybody knows what their rights are. Their right to speak, their right to defense, their right to a fair trial, their right to this, right to that. The government owes me, society owes me, blah, blah, blah. But we no longer ask ourselves, what can we do for a country? We ask, what can our country do for us? And, don't like the guy that said that, but he has a very good point. That point is that you have a duty. In order for, the rights mean absolutely nothing if they cannot be enforced by obligation. Those obligations are that the people around you do not take your house. Now, I think the founding fathers chose a great word, rights. And not lefts, because historically, left is not good. Anyways, rights. The founding fathers did not believe that they came without nothing. They do come to you with nothing, but they cannot be held in place and maintained and set forth upon you without your duty to protect them. A society obsessed with what is owed, but unwilling to discuss what it owes, eventually loses the conditions that make rights possible. I'm not arguing that the founding fathers thought rights were fake. I know I said that before. Quite the opposite. I'm arguing that rights don't maintain themselves. Rights require obligation, duties, and everything like that. You say you have a right to your house, but if everybody around you is not obligated not to take your house from you, then duty, obligation, and rights go hand in hand. Police have their duty to enforce the laws. They have an obligation to these duties. You can almost interchange duty and obligation. And I do that all the time. And I'm not really against it, but I'm not really for it. I'm really for the word duty. Everybody has a right to a free trial. But the judge also has a duty to maintain that. They have an obligation to maintain that. The people that vote for these people have an obligation to ensure that they're morally grounded to these rights and to the people and to the republic for which it stands. Indivisible. Behind almost every single right you enjoy is somebody fulfilling an obligation. Rights are what we receive from a functioning civilization, from the nature of the hierarchy. Duty is part of what keeps that civilization functioning. Now, we can argue the philosophical stuff of rights, and whether they're real, whether they're sitting on stilts. Jeremy, whatever, Betham, whatever he is, some philosophical dude that said rights are standing on stilts or something like that. Rights are more fundamental to the things that you can do. And you can say, well, anybody can do something. Doesn't mean that it's a right. Yeah, okay, I get. Now, people certainly believe rights exist, and I'm all for that. I'm all for people disagreeing that they exist. Both arguments are great. What we cannot actually argue is whether or not duty exists. That cannot be argued at all. Now, you could say that duty is forced upon you by whatever society expects of you, but there's nevertheless that you have an obligation to life, and if you fruit life into this world, such as a child, you have a duty to that child. If you have a contract with somebody, you have a duty to that contract. I don't understand why you would ever argue that duties aren't endowed somehow. Now, you can say a contract is a a structure that you and somebody else, other parties agree upon, and society and social norms are not, they're something you're born into. You never agreed upon them. But that's where the whole Declaration of Independence, the people have a right to self-govern. And when a government comes into play that wants to take that self-governing away, you're allowed to take that government from the government and establish your own. Thomas Jefferson believed that was a right, that you had a right to self-governing and everything. And I don't disagree with that. I believe in sovereignty. I believe every person is born sovereign in the United States. I'm not one of those sovereign citizen weirdos. I believe in organization, and I believe in hierarchical systems, so I believe in a government that does have these different powers and everything. And I'm glad we have checks and balances. But for the most part, you're a sovereign person. Like, another person can't tell you what to do, basically, unless you're under a duty or a contract. Then they can be like, hey dude, like, you agreed upon this. It's like, okay, you got a point. I did. So, duty and obligation, rights and law, and societal and cultural norms, they can kind of all meld together. And I think that's what makes this country great, because we took rights and we put them above duties somehow. Somehow, I don't know how that happened, but rights aren't above duty. Duties come first, rights kind of come afterwards, or they can come simultaneously. You know, I always have this issue, so I always argue these points, and it's hard to make a video on these because that is the point, that do duties come first or do rights come first? And it's like, well, rights are naturally ordained to you. Yeah, but you have to protect the rights. So a duty to speak out against something, sure, but like the right to speak is not necessarily a duty. But is it a duty? I know most people don't think about it like this. They think about, like, I have the right to speak, I can say whatever I want and everything. It's like, yeah, you can kind of say whatever you want. And then they bring in the legal stuff of not inciting violence. And that's a great way to limit speech. There's actually only one rights mentioned in the the Constitution of the United States of America that shall not be infringed, and that's the Second Amendment. The right to bear arms. That's the only one that does not have a limit, which I'm all for. If they were selling tanks to citizens, my duty would be to buy one. Operational tanks. Now, do I think that's a little overboard? Sure, we can argue this back and forth. You know, bioweapons, should regular citizens be able to carry around bioweapons? Yeah, now should our own government be manufacturing? They do, you got your pepper spray, your mace, all those are technically bioweapons. Well, not really, but CS gas is technically a bioweapon. But it's fairly harmless for the most part. We won't get into Waco. But anyways, rights and duties and rights, obligations to the duty, obligations to protect these rights and everything like that. It's the foundation of a solid country. When we can argue what comes first, does the right come first or does the duty come first? And there are plenty of people that can argue this way better than me. And I believe that some people, they just don't even care. They don't go out of their way to be rude when they speak. They don't go out of their way to be rude to an officer trying to do his job. They don't care about politics or government and everything. I honestly believe there's a large chunk of the US that is like that. And I'm not saying that those people are doing anything wrong, but you do kind of have a duty to know a little bit. You do have a duty to care about the future of your country. You do have a duty for the next generations. Something that the greatest generation truly believed in. They may not have thought about it daily when they were just being used and abused in the mines and the factories and everything, but they kind of emanated it. They had it coming out of them. And I think that's what made the country so great, is that the generations before the boomers did something so phenomenally great that they didn't even know what they were doing. They probably didn't have this patriotic sense for the most part, but it almost just emanated from them. You know, I don't know how to describe it, because we know that a 5-year-old that was working his fingers to the bone, counting and sorting coal, wasn't thinking of himself as a patriot for the future generations. Like, there's just no way that would even cross his mind. Freedom requires restraint. The question is whether that restraint comes from inside the citizen or from the government standing over him. Now, let's be honest here. Some people need a little bit of authority over them. I think in all cases, most people run into this issue where they need a little bit of authority over them. Whether that's in their childhood, their teen years, or even as an adult, when you just can't seem to make the right damn decision. Voters, basically. You can't seem to make the right dang decision. Like, just a quick side note. The boomers are such a large generation that the next few generations can't actually outvote them. The boomers have gotten really good at propaganda. This is where right and duty comes into place, where many people of a certain generation don't find a duty to their country, but more of what can I extract from the people as much as possible. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying even the younger generations all believe that. I'm not saying that I believe that. Now, I do believe in extracting as much out of something as possible. That's the natural order of things. It's just, how much are you willing to infringe on something or someone else to get to there? You need to make that minimal on how much you infringe. Minimal. Now, yeah, you're going to tell your children what they can and can't do and really severely infringe on what they can jump off of. Because one thing that they jump off of, harmless. The next thing they jump off of could severely injure them. You know, you're infringing on their right of action, their right of movement. I'm not saying the government should tell you what you can and can't jump off of, but maybe you should have a parachute if it's super high up, or a bungee cord. You know, maybe some amount of regulation's okay, is basically what I'm getting at. And it becomes encroachment on your rights, that it becomes almost everything you do is a duty to somebody else instead of a duty to country, where your duty to vote becomes your duty to that person. And that is wild to think, that we have gone from a duty to vote for your country and a duty to vote for somebody. This is the republic. Most people shouldn't even have the right to vote. Right. But the people that should have the duty to vote should have an obligation to vote for what's best for the country. And the country is only a country so long as the future generations maintain the culture and the government that is for the people. I know some systems are not republics, some systems are monarchies, some systems are dictatorships. And I get that. Some people need dictators, some people need monarchies. I believe Americans need the republic. We're just different. I truly believe that. And I believe in limiting certain things to ensure that the republic stays a republic. We're getting off track. I have notes in front of me and I'm just ignoring them, and I apologize. Founding fathers believed in all this. Duty, liberty, religion, and morality are indispensable supports of the government, blah, blah. But you can go into what Washington said, that duties maintain your rights and everything like that. What I want to get at is, did I have a right to cut these trees down? Yeah, I do have a right to start up the chainsaw and cut cut those trees down, stack them up like that, use them as firewood. Now, do I have a right to completely deforest 100 square miles of forest? Yeah, I think I do. I think I have that right. What's my duty though? To do it conservatively? Okay, sure. We can do it conservatively. We could not cut down every single tree. Well, okay, that's a good point. Let's not cut down every single tree. And let's ensure that we don't damage those trees when we're cutting down other trees. Okay, sure. What's another duty to that? Maybe we replant those trees. Maybe we use the land for a certain amount of time for whatever we need to use it for, and then we give the land back to itself. And we can start the cycle over again. Or if you can't give the land back, make sure you're using the land in a respectful way. Those are good duties. Those are good excuses for completely decimating forest. I'm not saying what I just said is all correct. It's probably not. There are much smarter arborists and conservationists than me that can come up with better ways to use the trees, that can use the land and everything. And I think it's important that we study those things. I'm not saying that we should it's a duty. It's a duty to know these things. It's a duty to speak out. It's a duty that if you feel the need to do something that infringes on animals, life, other people, it's your duty to ensure that you don't actually completely destroy something in the process of action. I am probably the wrong person to talk about this, but I feel a natural duty to speak on this, because maybe there's people out there that don't have a clue about duty at all, that don't have a clue about rights at all. They just think it's a word out in the ether that they can use whenever they want, when they feel like somebody's infringing on them. People are going to infringe on you on a daily basis, especially if you live in a city. Somebody's going to run a red light, you're going to hit them, they just infringed on you. Luckily, there's a law for that. But the little things where you can't get water, or not water, you can't get a certain meal at a restaurant because they didn't order properly or they ran out, whatever it is, things like that. My point is if you understand your rights, that's great. Maybe focus on your duties. Maybe if you don't care about your rights, focus on your duties to others. Focus on your duties to the land. Focus on your duties to the people, your neighbors, your community around you. Maybe start there. Maybe you just don't care about any of it. That is nihilism. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not saying that you can't not just care and go about your business, mowing your lawn, taking your kids to school or programs and stuff, because you're still kind of doing the stuff. You're acting. Now, you may not care about the definition of these things. You may not care. The founders understood something we seem increasingly uncomfortable to say. Freedom doesn't eliminate responsibility. Freedom transfers responsibility onto the citizen. A free civilization does not survive simply because everybody knows what they're entitled to. It survives because enough people still know what they owe. The cost, the sacrifice, the obligation, once again, the duty to something. The Republic doesn't demand something, it expects it. It has been owed by previous generations and people that have paid for the Republic. It is expected that payment is given by everybody. If you're not willing to give such payments, then you're not able to maintain such liberty. That is just the classical sense of saying freedom isn't free. That is true. It's not that it costs lives, and which it does, but that isn't the only thing it costs. It costs some amount of silence. It costs some amount of speech. It costs some amount of action, some amount of defense, some amount of offense. It costs a bunch of different things. It costs you to have to struggle. Childbearing is not simple, but in order for a country to maintain itself and its culture, you must have children. Pregnancy is not comfortable. Giving birth is not comfortable. Raising children is not always fun and pleasant. It's not like you bear children into this world for them to be your friends. These are things that we used to understand. We used to have obligations to the next generation by birthing the next generation. I can go on, and I think I've gone on long enough. But anyways, have duty to your neighbors, your family, your nation, your people.